Hey, it's Andre, and it's time to talk about episode 2 of Marvel Studios' Loki. This video will obviously contain spoilers to Loki. If you haven't seen the episode yet, go check it out, and then come back here. You have been warned. Spoilers. This episode cracked me up starting off because since we know this show is about time, it's funny that it started with what looked like it was going to be medieval times, and it turned out that it was just a Renaissance fair in Wisconsin from 1985. But we see some TVA agents showing up trying to find that variant Loki that's been causing so much problems across the timeline. And I love that the hooded figure mind controlled one of the TVA officers to start fighting the others to the tune of "I Need a Hero." Yeah, that thing started blasting while this fight occurred, which just made me laugh because a few days before this episode aired, they put out a trailer for the new Netflix He-Man animated series, Master of the Universe Revelation, and that trailer also had "I Need a Hero" in it. I'm holding out for a hero. So you know Marvel was giving He-Man a side eye like, man, seriously? We already had this plan. And Shrek 2 was like, what you say? Shrek 2, don't forget. Fairy Godmother, what's up? We get a cute segment with Loki and Miss Minutes. I just love Miss Minutes. I love that Loki is looking like a hologram of her and just like trying to hit her to see if she's in real time. And she's like, cut that out. But he's having to learn the lessons of how the TVA works. One of the big things that they note in this scene is that when a Nexus event occurs, the reason why the TVA have to act fast is because if they're able to get there in time and reset the timeline, everything is good for the sacred timeline. But if a Nexus event goes too far off the path, eventually it's going to get to a point where they can't fix it. And that new timeline just will have to exist. There's nothing they can do about it. We also learned that the TVA has dealt with Lokis before. They show a bunch of images of various Lokis that they have stopped before. This is just the one that seems to keep giving them trouble. And that's why Mobius is like, well, if we can use a Loki to catch a Loki, we'll be good. Even though the entire time, every member of the TVA is like, no. The Minutemen are like, no. Renslayer's like, no. Mobius like, no, just listen to me. I believe in him. I can change him.
You're up. Don't those
Absolutely not.
I also like that during the debriefing of going to catch the variant Loki, they had this long talk about Loki's various powers. And there was a whole breakdown with Loki that Loki explained about the differences between illusions and duplication. Because the TVA was like, Loki can duplicate. Loki was like, no. Loki doesn't duplicate. He creates illusions. Illusions being, I can create another being that you think you see like a hologram projection. But duplication means I can actually create another person. I can't do that. That's different. And Wanda is like, yeah, that's right. That's my territory. I just thought that was a very interesting conversation, and I couldn't tell if that was like some quirky thing that they were doing that's part of the humor of this show, or if that was kind of a remember that distinction just in case that needs to come up later. Because that's what always happens with these Marvel things. It's like, oh, that was just a random conversation. Then 3 episodes later, you're like, oh, I see why you said that. Oh, I see why you had that talk. Because this. I'm on to you, Loki. I don't know if I'll catch all of it, but I'm at least enjoying it. They go to the scene of the crime, and Loki, of course, always trying to be shady. He wants to meet with the timekeepers. So he tries to trick the TVA when they're at the scene of the crime, being like, oh, this is a trap. The variant Loki obviously wants you to chase them. If I know myself, I know that myself would set a trap. So what I need to do is I need to talk to the timekeepers and let them know how dangerous this threat is. And Mobius immediately was like, man, I see through your BS. Let's go. And then we see how they reset the timeline. They got these little like reset bomb devices. They put them down on the ground, and that sets up an area that once it goes off, it completely deletes, completely erases whatever is there to make all the variants of that timeline go away. And that's important because we see in that earlier scene, that holding out for a hero scene, the variant Loki kidnapped one of the Minutemen, did not kill them all, and took some of those reset bombs. Keep that in mind. So after about 10 more discussions of people talking to Mobius going, can we trust him? And him saying, absolutely, but I also don't trust him, but I need him to get this job done. Rinse, repeat. Can we again just appreciate the Owen Wilson, Tom Hiddleston conversation fights? Like I just love that they keep having these back and forth with each other. They had this whole talk about belief because Loki's like, you believe 3 space wizards created all of time and you and know what happens backwards and forwards. And then Mobius is like, I'm sorry, where did you come from? A frost giant? The adopted brother of a god from Asgard? Like, your stuff sounds ridiculous too. All of it sounds ridiculous if you just think about it too hard. I just feel like there should be a TikTok like, Talk about religion without talking about religion. Talk about religion while still being able to show your show in places that are very, very sensitive about religion. But hey, regardless of beliefs, I just thought it was a really interesting conversation. I just love these back and forths that they're doing. I don't know what it is about specifically the Tom Hiddleston, Owen Wilson talk back and forth, but I could just watch that all day. I hope it continues. Like, I want that to keep going. Just want them to keep talking. There's an indie film in there somewhere. There is some indie film to be made with Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson just talking. Loki is apparently like the TVA library looking at case files of variant Lokis. And in doing so, he finds the case file about Ragnarok, as in Thor Ragnarok. It has a whole description of what happened there, that everything got destroyed. But what he notices is that there was no variants mentioned after that event happened. And so he has a talk with Mobius. He's like, I figured it out. I know where the variant Loki is hiding. Apparently, if there is some huge apocalyptic cataclysmic event, some big major disaster, if you do something wild and crazy before that event happens, somehow that does not create a Nexus event because that part of the timeline kind of ends because that disaster ends. So he's thinking that the variant Loki is hiding in places before that happens. And he explains this using salad and salt and milk. Loki also proves this theory to Mobius by going to Pompeii before the mass volcanic eruption and just goes wild, runs out in the crowd, frees a bunch of goats. I love that he frees the goats and was like, be free, my horned friends, because, you know, he's got the horns too. And he just tells all the people there, we from the future, y'all all about to die. And Mobius is like, what are you doing, man? You're gonna mess up the timeline. But he looks down at his little device, no variants happening, no little string going off, and then that volcano starts erupting, and Loki's just like, what'd I tell you? So when Mobius remembers that the kid in France, when the variant Loki was there, got a piece of gum, he looked up that gum and figured out the time that that gum was available on market, which actually is in the future. And it's like, okay, so if that gum is from the future, that means the variant Loki is hiding in the future. So we're gonna have to look at disasters in the future to figure out where the variant Loki is hiding. So they start listing off these future disasters, and I'm like, Marvel, this is not a good idea. This is not the time to start throwing out, oh, this disaster is going to happen in 2032. This disaster is going to happen in 2049. Like, don't do that. You gonna jinx us. The Simpsons have done that. So be careful with your powers. This takes them to Alabama in 2050, where there's apparently a tidal wave. Alabama, take notes just in case. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but around 2048, 2049, look at the water. And they believe that the variant is hanging out at a Roxcart superstore because it's a superstore as well as a relief center as well as a warehouse where probably the gum came from, and they just happen to be right because the show's got to keep going. Come on, we got to get it right the first time. And I'm going to assume that Roxcart is a reference to Roxxon, which is a company that is in the Marvel Comics universe. Also been referenced in other Marvel properties. The Daredevil Netflix series referenced Roxxon. Also, the Miles Morales video game had Roxxon in it. Could we be getting more of Roxxon in the next phase? We'll see. They're looking for the variant, but the variant is able to shift their mind / power to other people. So B-15, which is the main TVA soldier that we've been seeing for the past couple of episodes, she gets controlled by the variant and starts talking to Loki. And I just love how her attitude and demeanor change when she's controlled by Loki, especially when she just gives that smile to Loki. And Loki gives a smile back, and I'm like, oh man, she totally did the Loki smile on him. Then the movie just becomes, what's that movie with Denzel Washington when like you touch people, then the serial killer went to the other person, and they always kept singing, time is on my side. Yes, it is. What's the name of that movie? I can look it up. I mean, I got IMDb. Hold on. Fallen, right? I think that's what it is. Anyway, the variant is going to different people. Loki, of course, tries his usual tricks, bargaining and everything, being like, look, when I was trying to trick the TVA earlier, I was buying you time. I'm trying to get to the timekeepers, and you could be on my side. Let's work together here. And Variant's like, that ain't what I want. You talk too much. And then takes over the body of this big Alabama boy who just beats the crap out of Loki. They have a superstore fight where they're using items in the store as weapons. Didn't he at one point like put his hand out and like a Roomba or like one of those smart vacuums go in his hand? Is that his Mjolnir? Appliances just zoom, and they fight with vacuums and stuff. I just thought that was funny. I'm like, this is the God of Mischief using vacuums and appliances to fight and get beaten by a down homeboy from Alabama that's possessed by a variant version of himself. I mean, what can't Marvel do? I don't know why that gets me. The God of Mischief, formerly living in Asgard, getting beat up by Bubba from Alabama. Like I don't know why that makes me laugh, but it's just so funny to me. Of course, the TVA is like, see, Mobius, I told you couldn't trust Lucky. He's ran off somewhere when they find B-15 unconscious. But she's unconscious, of course, because she got possessed by the variant Loki, but she's okay. She's not dead. They also find the kidnapped soldier from earlier who's all freaking out. And she's like, I told them, I said everything. I said where the timekeepers were. I gave all the information. I'm sorry. And she's like losing it because, you know, she got in that brain. If you remember in Thor the Dark World, home dude, Selvig, when he had Loki in his brain, he went off too. So like, you don't want Loki's in your brain. This is your brain on Loki. Any questions? It is ultimately revealed the variant Loki, who is Lady Loki. Hello, Loki. And when Loki noticed all these bombs around the place, he's like, oh, I get it. You brought us all here to blow us up. And she's like, fool, this ain't about you. Because it's not regular bombs. It's those reset bombs that reset the timeline. She's got them attached to a device that's sending them to various parts of the timeline through time portals like the TVA go through. This little mini time portals. And they all activate and fall randomly in random places, and they all go off, which means they reset stuff everywhere. And then the TVA headquarters just starts lighting up because she sent all these reset bombs out across history. Basically, all these random moments in time start messing up and breaking up, and that sacred timeline went from this to and everyone's looking at this like, oh my gosh. Even Renslayer was like, I can't be judged no more. I got to get back into action because this is looking bad. She grabs a stick, runs off. Oh man, y'all, methinks Lady Loki might have just created the multiverse. Like, this could be the multiverse because remember, if they can't stop all those Nexus events in a certain amount of time, they're set. Now, let's talk about Lady Loki for a second. Okay, this is gonna get weird. All right, everyone hold on. We're gonna deep dive. Hold tight, put your scuba gear on. We're deep diving right now. Okay, like I said before, there was some event that happened before the show came out where she showed up at the event. I thought seeing this actress who had the similar hair color to Tom Hiddleston was going to be Lady Loki. And now that she popped up here, she had the horns on and everything. So I was like, okay, she has to be the variant Loki. Like, she has to be the Lady Loki, right? But then she shows up in this episode, her hair is blonde. I was like, wait a minute, here's what's weird. I left the credits on. I don't care when they shrink that thing and say, go watch something else. I'm like, nah. I know how Marvel play. I'm just gonna play it safe. One of the international credits had her listed differently. Most of the international credits had the variant in their respective language, but one of them had her listed as Sylvie. And so I looked up in the Marvel database, Sylvie. Turns out there is a blonde character in Marvel named Sylvie who goes by another name, the Enchantress, and she apparently has powers. And I won't get into the full story here. If you want to look it up, you can easily look it up in the Marvel database. I'll just say right now, she does have a connection to Loki. There are some people that are going, this is Lady Loki, and there's some other people that's going, oh, this is Enchantress. I'm assuming we're going to find out as the series progresses, but I just find that interesting of, is she really a variant of Loki, or is this also part of her scheme by pretending that she is? We'll find out. Then she opens up her time portal, goes through, Loki follows, Mobius is like, Loki, no! And that's it. Quirky dialogue and quirky humor and quirky sci-fi that is, quirky is the word for this show. I'm really excited to see what happens next, especially after this variant being revealed and Loki running away from the TVA and following her, and what's going to happen with that. Because I'm assuming the next episode is going to be them interacting with each other, and that should be very interesting. How will a Loki talk to a Loki? If that other Loki is truly a Loki, or Enchantress, or Mephisto. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Please give it a thumbs up because that always helps me out. And if you're new here and like the type of stuff that I do, then I hope you subscribe and check out more videos. I love you like a play cousin. I'm Audi 5000 for all time, always.